And oh, hi, you. Hi, Leroy.
Hello,
How's it going?
Maya.
Okay, so
Hi,
let me just
Depot. It's
quickly do
going well,
your
thank you.
intro. Then you came up on stage. Thank you very much for agreeing to do this. Leroy Steinbacher has been, like, a very good friend and ex-colleague from my GE healthcare days. We left within months of each other. Twins, maybe. He's he's a dedicated DITA XML expert, and he's pulled us out of many a hot fix due to last-minute publication issues. His vast XSLT knowledge and general XML knowledge has been able to, just be able to pop up with with a kind of with a fix, at the last minute to allow us to meet our deadlines. Leroy now works for Accolade as a DITA XML information architect, and as one of our longest running partnerships, Accolade, formerly known as Amplexer, has kindly agreed to allow Leroy to demo a branch and merge use case that we came across recently. This use case will most likely seem familiar to a lot of you in the audience, actually, because it is pretty standard what happened in this demo that you're going to see. And using Componize DITA CCMS, you can manage complex release cycles, and not just by using profiling, but also by using advanced branch and merge. As you'll see, though, it's always better to plan ahead, preferably on paper or maybe virtual paper, a Miro board or something like that, to make sure that you can see virtually what it is that you're planning to, first of all, branch and then eventually merge. So take it away. Just a quick note to everyone, it's a 20-minute session, and then you got 5 minutes question and answer at the end of it. Leroy, you'll see my avatar pop up at 15 minutes, which means you got 5 minutes left, and then at 2 minutes to the end of time, my camera will come on. I might say a word if you don't notice me, but just to give you an idea. Okay, take it away.
Okay, thanks a lot. That was a good introduction, Depot. Thank you for inviting me to this session. One of the things, as we know, one of the best features of DITA XML is the ability to share content across various documents, even across various working groups. If you have some common content that can be reused in multiple places, that's a great benefit for many reasons. For translation, for making updates, you don't have to make changes in multiple places. So that, is like the by far the biggest advantage of working with, component structure content. But one of the questions I often get is like, hey, if we're going to share this content across various documents and even across various groups, how do we handle it when people are making changes here for this release, and maybe some people are making changes here for this release? And that's when things can get a little tricky. And so that's where this feature that's available in Componize, branch merge, can really help provide a solution for this type of release management. So you're still able to share the same common content, but then work on various parts of the development process at the same time, without messing up maybe a released version of that content that you need to at some point make a hotfix to, or a future release that somebody's working on, but it's not ready to be released quite yet, but you still want to do the development work on that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen and just do a quick demonstration of a simple or not so complex example. So what we're going to be looking at here is a generic medical device documentation set. And what I've set in place here is, like Depot says, what's really important when you're working on change management or release strategy is to kind of map out your different branches if you're going to be doing branch and merge. And so what I've done here is a very simplified scenario where we have content that's been approved and released. We've got version 1, and we're now working on version 1.1. And we know to get to 1.1, we have to make various changes, change 1, change 2, and change 3. and this may take 3 months or whatever. But we know, like within a month and a half, we know, or maybe we don't know, that there's going to be a hot fix that's coming in. So it could be an unknown bug, or maybe you know that this is something that we have to add midway through to the same content. So how do you handle that kind of situation? So I'm going to do a brief demo that covers that. But so if you do a branch, the nice thing is you can have a branch to work on your development content, and then you'd still have your main branch with your release content if you need to make any changes to that prior to a version 1.1 release, which will at that point merge all the development changes that you've worked on along with any kind of hot fix change that has also been made in the process. So I'm going to demonstrate that in Componize. So what we have here is, you can see I'm in a Componize site, a generic site called Medical Devices. I have my content in the main folder, and the content in question here is in the medical device folder. We have 3 different products, HM3, HM4, and HM5, and we also have a common folder where all the common content is. And so what I'm going to assume is where we're at right now is this medical device content in its state has been released for version 1. So at this point, we are preparing to work for version 2. So the first thing I want to do is, I know I want to branch, like I outlined here for development, is I want to create a branch. No branches have been set up here in this site yet. So what I want to do is I want to take this medical device folder where I know I need to do some development work, and I'm going to create a branch tree from this folder. So I'm just going to call this medical device. Oh, it's right there for me. Nice. 1.0. Okay, so I've successfully created my branch tree for the content that I want to do development work on. So if I go to the site dashboard, I can now, and this site dashboard, as you know, is configurable. You can add the branch dashlet if it's not already there. But when we add a new branch tree, you want to configure that in your branch dashlet. So here's my medical device 1.0, and there's my default branch is the medical device, which is the name of the site. The other option is to do the whole main site, but maybe you don't want to branch everything that's in your site. Maybe you want to work on content that's within a specific folder. So that's why I selected that folder. And now the first step usually is when you have a release and you're working on a branch for a future release is to create a tag. So a tag is kind of a snapshot of that release, all the content that existed at this point in time for this release. So I'm going to create a tag, and I'm going to call this medical device 1.0. So I've made a branch tree, and I've also created a tag that is a record of the content of that branch tree at this point in time. Okay, so within this branch dashlet, we can see the branches, but then if you click here, you can also take a look at your tags. So you can see I have a tag for medical device 1.0. And so what I want to do now is I want to start now working on a branch for medical device 1.1 for the future release. Another option you can do is, if you've made this tag, is to, let's say you want a record of the content as is, you can always download that content. So now I have an external record of all the content that was in release 1.0, and you can download that from the tag at any point. Okay, so now I want to create a branch from this tag, create branch, and I'm going to call this Oh, it's there for me right there. Medical device 1.1. Okay, so it started this job in the background, and there's not much content there, so it shouldn't take too long. If we go to the document library, you can see now we have a mirrored folder structure. So we have medical device, which is the source that we started with, and now we have a branch for medical device 1.1. Okay, so now we can start working on all the changes that we have for version 1.1. But the nice thing is we still have the previous version intact as we make these changes. So I'm just going to make some quick changes just so we can just simulate some content changes. I have Componize connected to my Oxygen through WebDav. So I'm looking at this, basically the same content in the Data Source Explorer. If I do a refresh here, you can see that I will also have that second branch. Okay, so I have, like I said, 3 different products. Just for simplicity, I am just going to work on, I'm going to make some changes just in one of the data maps. And so I'm just going to say for this topic, I'm just going to say introduction version 1.1. Just going to add a paragraph here. Update for version 1.1. Save, do another one for the electrodes topic. Again, version 1.1. Update for version 1.1. And just for fun, I'm going to also add a new illustration. This is a generic content for a Holt monitor. And so what I would like to do is, let's say for a future update, we need to show an image that shows a child application. So I am going to, in Componize, go back to Componize, and I have some content I want to add to common images. I'm going to add a new image, dragging and dropping into the images folder. So now if I go back to Oxygen, I should be able to add a figure here and a title. And if I go to my data source, I should be able to see that new image in here. See if I do a refresh. Holter monitor med right here. Let's pull that in there. And just make it a little cleaner. Does everybody like watching me work? Scale 50% or 50, that's fine. Okay, all right, so those are the changes that have been made for release 1. They're all done, everything's fine. Let's say we want to send this out for review. What we can do is we can go back to Componize and
5 minutes, Leroy.
Okay, thank you very much. We can now, from the branch, we are now able to publish this document with just those changes. I'll try to rush this. I won't publish it, but this way we're able to publish it. It's going to have those changes. but it's not going to affect the main branch. Now, let's say during the process of those changes, we also had to make a hotfix to the main branch. We could have also gone back here and made the change in the main branch. Let's say we had to add in the same DITA map. You'll notice I'm opening that map, but it's going to be a different copy of it because it's the main branch. We could also add in the introduction an important note. I fat-fingered that. But for the sake of time, for the sake of time, we'll just assume that we added this note to this main branch. At this point now, we could go back to Componize, and we could publish a draft from the main branch, HM3, that would have that hotfix, or we could publish a draft from the branch that we created for release 1, and those would be independent. And so I guess one last thing that I'll just demonstrate, and then that we'll have to leave it at that, is if we go now that we have changes, if we go back to our site dashboard, and we want to evaluate the changes in the different branches, we can go to our branch and do a compare. And so we want to compare 1.1 to 1. And so that'll give you a list of all the different changes. So now these are two different branches that have different changes that are independent of each other. When it's time for release 1, we're ready to commit those changes for version 1.1. And then we've already released the hotfix for version 1.0, and we want to include that in version 1.1. That's where we would go through and then run the merge. And then that would bring everything back home. And then we've had all the different changes that we've made at these different processes back into our version 1.1 master. So that was really a quick demo of something that can be, as you know, probably much more complex than this, but this kind of gives you an overview of that feature and how it works. The one thing that you can also do that I didn't demonstrate is you're also able to create branches from different folders, but let's say your content is
You've got a bit of time. I don't see any questions, so go for it.
Okay. Let's say you want to create a branch, not specifically for a folder, but let's say you have, a map for a certain product that's in a specific folder, but it's got a bunch of content that's shared in a common folder in various other docs. You can also create a branch, advanced, and that's where you can do a search. You can add files with dependencies. So that's where you could say, okay, I want to do a branch, but I want it to be just HM5, and I want to select, oops, the map is I want to select HM5 map. So on my branch, I just want to have this map and its dependencies. And that can be helpful if you're working on a specific doc only, but you want to pull in all the dependencies that may be shared in other content. That could minimize the size of your branches if you want to target specific content for branch. That's another option. Or you can even add files independently. If you know these are the 10 files I'm going to work on, I'm going to just add these files independently. So there's several different ways to create your branch that you want to work on. And that's about it.
Excellent. Thanks, Leroy.
Do you have anything to add to that?
No,
Nico?
Actually, that was quite good.
Any
I
questions?
think that little glitch that you had at the beginning was because of a timeout. So you must have started Componize. So
I think so.
Refresh. We've got a question from Roman, and it's. Let's answer that live. Once you've created your branch and you update something in your main branch, is the change also effective in the new branch?
I'm sorry,
Once you
one more
create your
time.
branch and you update something in your
Yeah.
main branch, is the change also effective in the new branch? Oh, that's
No, they're
you've
independent.
like basically forked out into a new tree. Yeah.
Not until you merge the two.
Okay. Okay. Yep, that answered it. Thank you. Maxime has got, let's mark that as a question. The topic, and answer that live. The topics modified from change 1, 2, and 3 were different from the topics modified from the hotfix, so the merge worked. Does it work fine if modification occurs on the same topics for both hotfix and change? We did look at that, didn't we? Do you want to answer it?
Yeah, Maxine, that's a good question, and I ran out of time, so I didn't actually make that change for the hotfix because I couldn't even figure out how to. I couldn't even put a note in. But yeah, so if I would have put that note in, it would have been the same topic. You would have noticed that I modified for the branch version 1.1, and when I would have done the compare, it would have showed one conflict. So it would have give you a list of changes, and it would say this is a conflict, meaning you've got somebody made a change to the same topic here, and somebody else made a change to that same topic here. So it's not just a change from one. It's a change in both places, and so that'll show up in your review, and then you can decide whether you want to merge that conflict or not when you do the merge.
Pick one over the other.
And then there was a question up above by, I don't know if you saw that, Depot Martin. Is there a limit to the number of branches running parallel? And as far as I know, I don't think there is.
Where was that question? I think I missed that. Oh yeah, there it is. Okay, yeah, I see it.
It's right above.
Is there a limit to the number of branches running parallel? Frank, no limit. There we go.
No
Thanks,
limit,
Frank.
yeah.
Yeah, finished answering. Okay, that's brilliant. We're getting loads of questions. We've still got 4 minutes to go on the questions before well, no, actually, not actually 4 minutes, but we've got another minute or so. Are there any other questions?
Yeah, so this was a very simplified example. We could probably spend an hour and a half going over branch merge.
And one thing, what we could do is, like, you know, for those of you who have questions, leave your name and leave the fact that you'd like us to contact you. We could set up, you know, a demo for you, or point you to any demos that we have already recorded, and, you know, any sorts of explanations. We're going to be creating quite a lot of new content for our help, and a lot of video content as well. So follow me on LinkedIn, join our YouTube channel. That's where we'll be posting all the new videos that we're going to be doing. And then if you want, contact us, and we can set up some time to, like, you know, work with you on a particular use case, and it might even be more interesting if it's your particular use case. Oh,
I also added some links to the chat. There's two really helpful links in the Componize documentation for branch merge, and then also a link that I used to create. Where'd my diagram go? Oh, I'm on the wrong screen here. I'm not sharing my screen. Oh, I'm not sharing my screen, but the diagram that I created for the two branches, there's a link to that tool, which I've never been very good at creating diagrams. But this tool is very helpful. I was able to put something together rather quickly, so that might be helpful as well.
Okay. Ooh, my screen's doing something. Let me stop that and start it again. Thank you very much, Leroy. It was most interesting, and branch and merge is just always such a, you know, a topic that you need to, like, sit down with people, you know, work through it. It can get really confusing very quickly, but once you have you know, the grasp of a few basics with branch and merge, especially how it works in our system, then, you know, you find it's quite easy actually eventually. But that main thing is draw it out. If you draw it first of all, then, you know, that's half the work done.